Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the gun was cold against Kalen's temple, but the voice that whispered in his ear was colder, sending a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with the lethal steel. Pull the trigger if you wish, little viper, but remember who stitched that heart back together inside your chest. Kalen's hand trembled, not from fear, but from the terrifying realization that the man standing before him, arrogant, immaculate, and utterly unbothered by the weapon pressed to his skull, was right. The silence in the penthouse was deafening, broken only by the hum of the city far below and the ragged sound of Kalen's breathing. He had been the underworld's most feared enforcer, a weapon forged in blood, yet here he stood, barefoot on a Persian rug, bandaged and broken, held captive not by chains, but by a debt too heavy to quantify. The memory of the rain was still vivid, a phantom sensation that clung to Kalen's skin even in the warmth of the luxury suite. It had been 3 weeks since the betrayal. 3 weeks since Silas, the man he had called brother, the man he had killed for, had looked him in the eye and driven a serrated blade between his ribs. Asterisk, you've become too dangerous, Kai. A dog that bites its master must be put down. Asterisk. Silas had left him to die in the gutter of a Neo-Soul alleyway, the neon lights reflecting in the black slurry of rain and blood pooling around him. Kalen remembered the cold seeping into his marrow, the fading rhythm of his own pulse. He remembered accepting the end. And then, he remembered the footsteps. They were rhythmic, precise, the sound of Italian leather on wet pavement. A shadow had fallen over him, blocking out the harsh neon glare. A waist, a deep, baritone voice had murmured. It wasn't pity. It was an appraisal. Such a beautiful instrument, discarded before its final symphony. Kalen had tried to snarl, to tell the stranger to fuck off and let him die, but only a gurgle of blood escaped his lips. Then, darkness took him. When Kalen first woke, the pain was the only thing that convinced him he wasn't in hell. Hell wouldn't smell like antiseptic and sandalwood. He was lying in a bed that felt like a cloud, his torso wrapped tightly in medical gauze. He tried to sit up, a reflex of survival, but a firm hand pushed him back down. The touch was gentle but possessed the immovable weight of absolute authority. Careful. I spent 6 hours reconnecting your arteries. I would be displeased if you tore them open so soon. Kalen blinked, his vision swimming into focus. Sitting in a velvet armchair beside the bed was a man who looked like he had been carved from marble and ice. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit without a single crease, his silver-rimmed glasses catching the dim light. His hair was dark, swept back with severe precision, and his eyes were the color of slate, unreadable, intelligent, and predatory. Julian Vane. The name hit Kalen like a physical blow. Julian Vane was a ghost story in the underworld. They called him the Architect. He didn't run a gang. He owned the people who did. He was the neutral ground, the banker, the doctor, the one man you never, ever crossed. You, Kalen rasped, his throat feeling like it was filled with glass. You saved me. I did, Julian said, crossing his legs elegantly. He picked up a crystal tumbler of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid. Your lung was collapsed, your spleen ruptured, and you had lost 3 pints of blood. A lesser surgeon would have let you die. A lesser man would have finished the job Silas started. Kalen stiffened at the name. The rage was immediate, a hot spike in his chest, but he was too weak to act on it. Why, he managed to ask. I have no money. The syndicate has seized my accounts. I'm a dead man walking. Julian took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving Kalen's face. I am aware of your insolvency, Kalen. I didn't save you for your money. Then what? Kalen demanded, the fear of the unknown creeping in. In their world, nothing was free. A life debt to the Architect was worse than death. You want me to kill someone? To take down Silas. Julian stood up then, setting the glass down with a soft clink. He walked to the side of the bed, leaning over until his face was inches from Kalen's. Kalen could smell the faint scent of expensive tobacco and rain on him. I have enough killers, Julian said softly, his thumb reaching out to trace the line of Kalen's jaw. The touch was electric, shocking Kalen into stillness. And Silas is a pawn who will fall in due time. I don't want your skills, Kalen. I don't want your gratitude. Julian's eyes darkened, the pupil dilating, swallowing the slate gray. I want you. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I want you here, Julian continued, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating in Kalen's chest. In my house. In my bed. By my side. You were a weapon in Silas's hands, a blunt object used to bludgeon his enemies. But with me, you will be a partner. A possession. A king. Kalen stared at him, his mind reeling. You want to own me. I already do, Julian corrected calmly. I bought your life from the Reaper. The receipt is stamped on your skin in stitches and scars. You belong to me, Kalen Rhee. Now sleep. You need your strength if you are to argue with me later. The weeks that followed were a torment of slow-burn agony and confusing intimacy. Kalen was a prisoner in the penthouse, a gilded cage high above the city. Julian didn't lock the doors, but the security detail and Kalen's own physical weakness were more effective than any bars. The dynamic between them was a volatile dance. Kalen, the feral enforcer used to solving problems with violence, found himself completely disarmed by Julian's domestic dominance. It was in the small moments that the trap tightened. It was the way Julian would return home from his empire of shadows, loosen his tie, and immediately seek Kalen out. He would inspect Kalen's wounds with the clinical detachment of a doctor, but his fingers would linger too long on Kalen's bare skin, his touch burning like a brand. You're healing well, Julian murmured one evening, applying a cooling salve to the angry red scar on Kalen's side. Kalen was sitting on the edge of the bathroom vanity, shirtless, while Julian stood between his spread knees. The proximity was maddening. I can leave soon, Kalen said, though the words lacked conviction. Julian looked up, his hands pausing on Kalen's ribs. And go where? To the streets? To be hunted. I have to kill him, Julian, Kalen hissed, grabbing Julian's wrists. Silas. He thinks I'm dead. I have the element of surprise. You have a death wish, Julian countered smoothly, not fighting Kalen's grip. Silas has doubled his guard. He is paranoid. If you go now, you die. And I did not invest so much time and effort into you just to have you throw yourself into a wood chipper. Is that all I am? An investment? Kalen challenged, his eyes flashing. Julian's expression shifted. The icy mask cracked, revealing a glimpse of the ravenous hunger beneath. He stepped closer, his thighs pressing against Kalen's. You are an obsession, Julian admitted, the honesty of it stunning Kalen into silence. I have watched you for years, Kalen. I watched you bleed for a man who didn't deserve you. I watched you break your own bones to keep his empire standing. I waited. I waited for the moment he would inevitably betray you, so I could step in and take what should have been mine from the start. Kalen's breath hitched. You knew. I knew Silas was planning to purge his ranks. I could have warned you, Julian said ruthlessly. But if I had warned you, you would have stayed loyal. You would have fought him and died honorably. I needed you broken. I needed you to have nowhere else to go. You manipulative bastard, Kalen whispered, but his heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. It was twisted, dark, and possessive, and God help him, it was the first time in his life someone had wanted him enough to burn the world down to get him. Perhaps, Julian murmured, leaning in until their lips were a breath apart. But I am the bastard who kept you warm when the world turned cold. Hate me if it keeps your heart beating, Kalen. But do not leave me. He didn't kiss him. He pulled away, leaving Kalen shivering in the cool air, his skin aching for a contact he shouldn't want. The turning point came on a storm-swept Tuesday. Kalen had regained enough strength to train. He was in the private gym, hammering a punching bag with a ferocity that threatened to split the leather. Sweat slicked his hair to his forehead, and his scars pulled tight with every movement. He didn't hear the intrusion until the alarms blared. The penthouse security system, usually silent, screamed a warning. Asterisk breach. Elevator shaft, asterisk. Kalen froze. Julian was in his study, conducting a meeting with international brokers. Kalen didn't think. He reacted. He grabbed the hidden Glock he had found taped under the sink. Julian wasn't sloppy. He had left it there on purpose, Kalen realized now, and sprinted toward the study. The double doors were blown open. Inside, chaos reigned. Two of Julian's guards were down. Julian was behind his heavy mahogany desk, firing with calm precision, but he was pinned. 3 men in tactical gear were advancing. Kalen recognized the crest on their vests. Silas's death squad. They hadn't come for Kalen. They had come for the architect, to cut the head off the snake that controlled the city's funds. Kalen could have run. The service exit was clear. He could have vanished into the night, free of debts, free of the confusing web of desire Julian had spun around him. He looked at Julian. For the first time, the architect looked mortal. A line of blood trickled from his temple. He was reloading, his eyes scanning the room for an exit he couldn't reach. Mine, a voice roared in Kalen's head. He is mine. Kalen moved. He didn't just enter the room. He exploded into it. He took the first gunman from behind, snapping his neck with a sickening crack before the man knew he was there. He used the falling body as a shield, firing the Glock with deadly accuracy. 2 shots, 2 bodies hitting the floor. The third gunman turned, raising a submachine gun. Kalen didn't have the angle. He lunged, tackling the man. They crashed into a glass display case, shards raining down on them. The gunman was strong, his hands going for Kalen's throat, squeezing the air from his healing lungs. Kalen's vision spotted. He clawed at the man's eyes, but his strength was fading. Bang! The gunman's head snapped back, a red mist spraying over Kalen's face. The weight went dead. Kalen shoved the corpse off, gasping for air, his chest heaving. He looked up. Julian stood over him, the smoking gun in his hand. He didn't look at the dead men. He only looked at Kalen. You stayed, Julian said. It wasn't a question. It was a revelation. Kalen wiped the blood from his eyes, struggling to his feet. He swayed, and Julian was there instantly, catching him. The contact was solid, grounding. You're an idiot, Kalen choked out, grabbing Julian's lapels, pulling him close. You let your guard down. I was distracted, Julian confessed, his hands gripping Kalen's waist tightly, pulling their bodies flush together. I was thinking about you. Adrenaline was a potent drug. The danger, the blood, the realization that they had both almost died, it shattered the last of Kalen's resistance. I hate you, Kalen said, but his eyes dropped to Julian's lips. Prove it, Julian challenged. Kalen surged forward, crashing his lips against Julian's. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision of teeth and tongue, a desperate claim. Julian groaned low in his throat, a sound of triumph and hunger, and swept Kalen up into his arms, carrying him out of the wreckage of the study. They didn't make it to the bedroom. Julian pressed Kalen against the hallway wall, his hands roaming everywhere, mapping the body he had saved. You had a gun, Julian murmured against Kalen's neck, biting the sensitive skin over his pulse. You could have killed me. You could have run. I know. Kalen gasped, arching into the touch. But you were right. Julian pulled back, his eyes searching Kalen's. About what? I was a dog for Silas, Kalen admitted, the truth raw and painful. But with you, I'm not a pet. I chose this. I chose you. Julian's expression softened, the icy facade melting away completely to reveal a devotion that was terrifying in its intensity. He cupped Kalen's face with bloodstained hands. Then the debt is paid, Julian whispered. You owe me nothing, Kalen. From this moment, you are here because you want to be. Kalen looked at the man who had stitched him back together, the man who had calculated every move to ensure they ended up right here, in this hallway, covered in the blood of their enemies. No, Kalen said, a wicked smile touching his lips, the viper returning to his eyes. I'm not here because I want to be. I'm here because you need protection, architect. Clearly, your security is shit. Julian laughed, a rare, genuine sound that transformed his face. Is that so? Then I suppose I'll have to hire you. What is your fee? Kalen pulled Julian down by his tie, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. I think you know exactly what I want. The end of Silas came 3 days later. It wasn't a war, it was an execution. With Julian's resources and Kalen's knowledge of the syndicate's inner workings, they dismantled Silas's operation piece by piece. They froze his assets, intercepted his shipments, and turned his captains. When Kalen finally walked into Silas's office, the man was alone, shivering in the dark, a bottle of vodka in his hand. Silas looked up, his eyes bloodshot. He saw Kalen, healthy, lethal, and dressed in a suit that matched Julian's, and he knew. You found a new master, Silas spat, venomous to the end. Kalen shook his head slowly. He raised the gun, the one Julian had given him, a custom piece with a grip molded to his hand. No, Silas. I found a partner. The gunshot was a punctuation mark on his past life. The balcony of the penthouse offered a view of the entire city, a sprawling grid of gold and darkness. Kalen leaned against the railing, the wind ruffling his hair. He felt a presence behind him, a warmth that radiated through the crisp night air. Julian's arms wrapped around his waist, pulling him back against a solid chest. Kalen relaxed into the embrace, resting his head on Julian's shoulder. It's done, Julian said quietly. It's done, Kalen echoed. The vengeance he had craved for so long was finished, but the emptiness he expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, he felt anchored. What now? Kalen asked. Julian turned him around, his slate eyes catching the moonlight. Now? We build. The city is leaderless. It needs order. It needs an architect. And a viper? Kalen smirked. And a king, Julian corrected. He took Kalen's hand, bringing the knuckles to his lips in a gesture that was equal parts reverence and possession. I saved your life, Kalen, but you made mine worth living. Kalen looked at the man who had manipulated, schemed, and killed for him. He saw the darkness in Julian, the calculating coldness. But he also saw the way Julian looked at him, like he was the only source of light in a pitch-black universe. You still don't get gratitude, Kalen whispered, leaning in to seal their pact. But you have me. Forever. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by letting himself be caught in the jaws of the beast. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take absolute control to protect what was his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, is it true love if it starts with a calculated trap, or is manipulation unforgivable even if it saves you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,